Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of IK NHL Daily Talk, and it is I, Kyle, and unfortunately Jacob is not here to join me, but it's been a bit since, I've made an episode all alone, and as a matter of fact, actually been a part of an episode as Jacob has done the last two on his own, but I appreciate him and his work, and yeah, I'm back, and obviously we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today, and, I'm fully back from my trip, like I stated last time I was on the show. I got a haircut, so I'm looking fresh and ready to roll. But unfortunately, on the NHL's front page, there's a slight spoiler about what happened in the way of, the game that happened today. But if you guys want to read that, that's up to you. But on that note, I'm going to move straight into today's news. And obviously, the first thing, which we'll address the elephant in the room, and as that is the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs won the NHL draft lottery and will have the choice of McKenna or Stenberg or frankly anyone else at number one. And then, of course, forward McKenna from Penn State and then Frolenda FC in the SHL was having Stenberg. And yeah, no, unfortunately, the Canucks, they dropped two picks because they had the best odds. And every other team up to that ninth place odd spot dropped as well, at least one, because obviously the Leafs jumped from 5-1 and the Sharks jumped from 9-2. And I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens, but I I don't know. I've seen a lot of posts saying like McKenna wants to reopen his criminal charges and criminal investigation due to having to be drafted by the Leafs, and I think that's pretty hilarious. But ultimately, obviously, that's not going to happen. And yeah, I mean, we'll see if McKenna's a Leaf or if the Leafs decide to go elsewhere. And of course, same goes for the Sharks. And personally, I would not be surprised if the Sharks go a little bit off the board and potentially, get a guy like Chase Reed or one of those defenders because their forward core's pretty stacked. I mean, currently they could have Celebrini, Smith, and then of course, you still got Misa down the middle, and those three guys would make an incredible center core for a very long time. So yeah, no, let me know down below what you think the Sharks should do with number two, assuming of course, the Leafs do actually take McKenna, but if McKenna doesn't go one, he's going to guaranteed. But yeah, no, the Leafs have won the draft lottery, and obviously, when we get Iacob back on the show, we'll get him to talk about this too, and we'll have a deeper conversation about this. But I want to just leave it at that, and of course, the news has got to get out there for you guys. But we'll close the tab here, and moving back onto obviously the playoff news. Victor Hedman confirmed to the media that his leave of absence that had him out since March 20th and through the playoffs was due to mental health, and I mean, it's unfortunate for obviously him, the Tampa Bay Lightning as a whole, and his family, because you never want to see a guy go through this. He missed an entire playoff series where his team ended up losing in a well, I guess, really close Game 7 because the Montreal Canadiens got outshot 29-9, and yet they still found a way to beat Vasi twice and sealed the deal. But if Victor Hedman had been there, you can't help but think that potentially, the result could have been different. But obviously, in Hedman's absence this year, Radish had himself an absurd season and quite incredible. Moser took a next step. You still have guys like Chernak and obviously, McDonough. And that decor, even without Hedman, is not bad. But Hedman not being there still leaves a void, especially on that bottom pair. And yeah, get better soon. And hopefully, he'll be ready to go and ready to play next season and potentially even join, Sweden at the World Championships. But we will see what happens regarding that. And yeah, sucks for him, but we'll see what happens. But as for our next news points, which actually we have, I believe, a couple Sens news points, which I think the other news point was actually over here, which, yes, I'll start with this one real quick, which this one we see Ridley Gregg gets suspended for 2 games, and that was regarding, a play that he made in Game 4 against the Canes for roughing Sean Walker. And obviously it came out late, but, the Sens obviously are eliminated and got eliminated in this game, so he will be suspended for 2 regular season games, so the opening 2 games of next season. And yeah, you hate to see it, but ultimately, who cares? But of course, we'll move on to the second Sens news point, which obviously we'll cover a couple of those at the end there. But Stephen Holiday has signed a 2-year deal worth an annual or average annual value of $1.075 million. And Stephen Holiday, who is 23 years old, had 4 goals, 11 points through 30 games played with the Ottawa Senators in the NHL this season. And he also had 2 goals and 29 points through 29 games played with the Belleville Senators. So, for whatever reason, when he came up to the NHL, he actually scored more goals than he did in the AHL, whether that's a confidence thing and who knows. But yeah, I like the deal, and obviously $1 million or just over, especially with the cap raising a whole 8.5 million for next season, is very low risk. And Stephen Holiday is a solid prospect, and we'll see how he plays. But yeah, good signing for the Sens, and we'll see what happens. But unfortunate news for the Oilers. I'll cover this one real quick, but Robbie Yarventi, who is a prospect for the Oilers, signed a 2-year deal with HC Ambri Piotta in the National League in Switzerland, and obviously he's leaving the Edmonton Oilers organization. And this is a minor league move, so figured I'd just mention it real quick. But yeah, no more Robbie Yarventi, and the potential chance of him making it and whatnot is out of the window. But couple defenders off of Edmonton that will be joining, obviously, the Canadian men's national team at the World Championship are Evan Bouchard and Darnell Nurse. And, of course, this comes after, the Oilers having a disappointing round one loss to the Ducks. And I think Iacob and I should still, make a short on that and talk about our thoughts. But, I mean, I've come to terms with it now. Obviously, we'll see what happens. I mean, personally, I think both teams in the Pacific should be abolished, and we should see whichever team makes it out of the Central advance all the way to the Stanley Cup final. But that's just my opinion, and ultimately it is what it is. But huge loss for Canada is one of the comments, but I don't know what to say. But yeah, Darnell Nurse, obviously, he may or may not be an Oiler going into next season. And Bouchard, who, at least according to the, large, I guess, majority, seem to think that he is incredibly inconsistent, which I will not necessarily argue with the fact that he's inconsistent, but I do think that, he's a lot more solid than a lot of people give him credit for. But the fact that he did not get a single, or not a single, but he didn't get proper Norris nomination is ridiculous. He got snubbed completely. But yeah, we'll see. But Matthews is unsure about playing in Toronto next season, which, to be honest, now that McKenna's coming, I don't know about that one. We'll see, obviously, but yeah, I don't know about that one. You guys can have a discussion about that down below, and if you want to see a short about that, I'll make one. But I don't know. I think he'll stick around, to be honest. But just another signing for a player who is a former NHLer, who obviously is joining a Czech club or staying in the Czech Liga, which obviously this is Michael Kempny, and he signed a 1-year deal with Rytiri Kladno, which this is Jaromir Jagr's team, which obviously Jagr I think is done now, but I'm sure we'll, talk about him again at some point. And obviously, he's a legend of the game. His name will never be forgotten. But yeah, Kempney, who's 35 years old, had 7 goals, 15 points through 39 games with Brynäs IF in the Swedish Hockey League this season. And he also played 15 games for Czechia's national team, scoring 1 goal and 2 points in that span, which he was a part of that, Olympic roster for the Czechs and didn't have a terrible Olympics. So good for him. And of course, like they're mentioning here, 2018 Stanley Cup champ Michael Kempney, which he was a Hawk and a Capital. Those are the only 2 teams I recall him playing on. If there was a third, I apologize. But yeah, Blackhawk. Oh, Seattle Kraken. Wow. Okay, that's a pull. But yeah, apparently people remember that, and good for him. And hopefully he can make his, I guess his a name over there. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to say about that. But what's the next news? Because I guess we're nearing the end, but the next point is one player who is retired, which Corbinian Holzer, who is a German defender, has retired from professional hockey at the age of 38, and Holzer played 206 NHL games from 2010 to 2020 with the Maple Leafs, Anaheim Ducks, and Nashville Predators, scoring 6 goals and 27 points in that span. And he also played 91 games with Germany's men's national team from 09 to 2022, scoring 6 goals and 12 points in that span. And of course, He was drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs 111th overall in the '06 draft. So enjoy your retirement, Corbinian Holzer. And I still remember when he got traded 1-for-1 for Matt Irwin. And obviously, I know some obscure hockey facts, but some of you guys, obviously don't remember him. And he was solid. And he was a serviceable defender, obviously. But now he's done. And best of luck in retirement. But we have our first overall pick in the 2026 WHL draft, which, of course, the Kelowna Rockets were the team that ended up having it, but they selected Madden Deneau with the first pick as, man, Deneau, who's 15 years old, had 65 goals and 145 points through 34 games with the Red Deer Rebels, U15 AAA team in the AEHL this season, and yeah, he's ridiculous. I don't know what to say, but that kid's gonna be nasty, and just wait till he's in the show. But we have just a few more signings to talk about, and then of course we will move on to obviously the schedule from yesterday, which I will just announce the scores for today since you know it's getting on the later side, and obviously I have time, but I think I want to save a proper episode for when Jacob's around. But the Pittsburgh Penguins have extended forward Connor Dewar to a 2-year deal with $2.25 million average annual value. And Dewar, who is 26 years old, had 14 goals and 30 points through 78 games played this season with the Penguins. And obviously, he is obviously a former Wild skater. And on top of that, he's also been on the Toronto Maple Leafs. And yeah, I like Connor Dewar, and he was one of those guys that if he had slipped through to free agency, I would have wanted my Edmonton Oilers to go after him. And at that $2.25 million value, especially considering he put up 30 points and was a great penalty killer for, the Penguins, great signing and greatest fourth line of all time, which that Penguins fourth line this season was, I mean, honestly, they were huge. And I like this guy, and good signing for the Penguins. He hits, he penalty kills, he does it all, honestly, at this point. But the Washington Capitals have signed forward Peter Sikora, which I don't know, it's not the Peter Sikora you might be thinking about, but this is his entry level deal worth an average annual value of just under $1 million. And Sikora, who's 20 years old, had 3 goals, 9 points through 24 games played with HC Triniak in the Czech League this season, and he also had 2 goals, 6 points through 4 games played with HC Friediak in the Czechia too. So obviously with and apparently Czechia's national team or U20 national team, he had 2 goals and 9 points through 7 games in their run to get silver. So good for the kid, and yeah, he's honestly earned it at this point. And obviously, we expected him to get an NHL deal, but he's not the only forward, or I guess, wait, he was a forward, right? I need to fact check this because I don't want to speak nonsense. But yes. Guys, don't worry, the yawns are back. But the Washington Capitals have signed forward Theodore Niederbach to a 1-year or I guess technically it's an entry level deal because obviously he's never had an NHL deal prior to now. But yeah, they signed him to a 1-year deal worth $1.025 million average annual value, so that's all he's going to get for one season. And Niederbach, who is 24 years old, had 13 goals, 32 points through 52 games played with Frölunda HC in the Swedish Hockey League this season. And he was originally a 51st overall pick by the Red Wings in 2020, but obviously he did not pan out at that point how they thought, and maybe he refused to sign with the team, but honestly, this guy is the LeBron James of 51st overall Red Wings draft picks, which yeah, we'll leave it at that. But just a few more, which I'm not even gonna bother with Puck Empire or Puck Report. Puck Empire is good enough for today. But the Pittsburgh Penguins have extended defenseman Ilya Solovyov to a 1-year deal worth $850K, and he played for a couple teams over the last, or I guess a few teams over the last few years, but Ilya Solovyov played, blah, 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 blah. Sorry. He's 25 years old and had 1 goal 8 points through 30 games played with the Colorado Avalanche and Pittsburgh Penguins in the NHL this season. And of course, he spent some time with the AHL affiliate of the Avs, but now he's a Penguin, and yeah, I mean, solid defender and 850K, it's a good deal. And I mean, I honestly like the Penguins team that they're building. I think they're pretty underrated, but this is where I was referring to the snubs, of course, of, snubbing Evan Bouchard as he had an incredible season, but the three defenders who are in contention for the Norris trophies are Rasmus Dahlin, Zach Werenski, and Cale Makar. And personally, I think, considering the season he just had, excuse me, and of course, the nominees and everything, and take everything into consideration, I think Werenski's going to get himself his first Norris, and well deserved. And fortunately, the Blue Jackets missed the playoffs, but that does not take away from his incredible season. And because Bouchard got snubbed, I don't want to talk about it for too long, but one more signing and one promotion. But the Utah Mammoth have signed forward Yegor Boyrikov to a 3-year entry-level deal, and Boyrikov, who's 20 years old, had 16 goals, 30 points through 59 games with Dynamo Minsk in the KHL this season, and he also played 2 games with the Belarus men's national team this season, but has not registered a point. And he was 110th overall pick by Utah in the 2025 NHL entry draft. And yeah, solid signing. And this kid looks like he's going to be pretty solid. And it's pretty funny how the Dynamo Minsk logo looks somewhat similar to the Utah Mammoth logo, looking at them side by side. But yeah, this kid's not bad, and we'll see what he can do, obviously, for the Utah. But I doubt he's an NHLer this season. But maybe a few years down the line from now, we will see him make the jump. But yeah, no. Now, of course, in our last news point, which it just feels weird talking to myself. I wish Iacob were here, but I've been moving through the news. But I mean, obviously, we're here now, and let's talk about it. But Kazakhstan has been promoted to the top division for the 2027 IIHF World Championships, and obviously that's because they won the B division. And whoever ends up, getting relegated this year will end up going down. But regardless of who gets relegated, Kazakhstan will join, and this is a country that, they have some talented hockey players. They're a talented team, and the Kazakhs were last in the top division last year before being relegated. So, they were 1 year down and they're right back up. But apparently, France, Poland, and Ukraine are all tied for that final spot. So we'll see what happens, but very good for them. And yeah, let's get on to the schedule for yesterday, which I'm gonna make this really quick, obviously, but we saw the Montreal Canadiens visit the Buffalo Sabres, and I watched this game, and it was honestly, like, aside from the third period, it's pretty lopsided in favor of the Sabres. But the Sabres take this one on home ice, 4-2 over the Canadiens, and the game-winning goal would be scored by Jordan Greenway, and arguably, man, I just yawned because I don't know. I can't speak for this long. I don't know how Jakob does it, but Alex Line is the winning goaltender, and yeah, the Sabres take a 1-0 lead in this series. And I mean, personally, after the Oilers are out, this is the team I'm jumping on. I'm jumping on the Sabres bandwagon, and I'm happy to see them go up 1-0. But moving on to the second and final matchup from obviously yesterday's games, we saw the Ducks visit the Golden Knights, which obviously for Game 3 they will have home ice, but the Ducks would actually take Game 2, 3-1 over the Golden Knights, as Leo Carlson would score the game winner, and Lukas Dostal would record the win for the Anaheim Ducks. And now they've got the series tied at 1, so I like their odds, but they've got to keep it up. And as for today's game, we only had one, which would see the Carolina Hurricanes visit the Philadelphia Flyers. So the Flyers have home ice now for the first time. Well, I guess first time since round 1. First time since Game 6 where they eliminated the Penguins. But this game was at 6 o'clock Mountain Time. So this game started 3 hours and 43 minutes ago, according to clock time. But obviously, if you're in the Central Time Zone, that game is at 7 o'clock. And for Eastern folks, it is 8 o'clock p.m. So yeah, this game's already underway, and I can't make any picks associated with that. But the starting goaltenders for today are Frederik Andersen and Dan Vladar. But before you guys click off this video, because of course, if you listen this far, I appreciate it. And yeah, this is a pretty short one, but I don't know. Sometimes you got to keep it short and sweet, and you know, go check out our Spotify. Obviously, Iacob has been keeping up with it a little bit, and he's trying to pull some episodes, and we will be getting some more episodes out for you guys. But yeah, check it out. IK NHL Daily Talk, just like the YouTube channel. Which, speaking of the YouTube channel, please subscribe and leave a like on this video, as that would mean the world to us. And on top of that, check out our Instagram, which is also IK NHL Daily Talk, and it's kind of like the hub where we have the links towards the Spotify and the YouTube there. So yeah, thank you guys for watching today. I mean, we'll save the Yap session for when Jakob's here, and there's not a lot of games these days and not a lot of news, so definitely a Yap session can happen in one of the coming days. But yes, you know, I don't know. I'm trying to think and speak at the same time, and it's not going very well. But yes, I'll leave it at that. Thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy, comment the word mini, and I'll leave a like on your comment. And yeah, peace out, guys. I will see you next time. Have a good night and a good, Friday coming up. Wait, it is Thursday, right? Okay. Have a good Friday and a good weekend ahead. Peace out, y'all.